The Phantom Tollbooth. Among the biggest names in animation, Chuck Jones has often been credited as one of the greatest creators of cartoons, and possibly the most beloved director of the Looney Tunes. However, like many artists, Jones would be more recognized in one field of the medium, which in this case is cartoons, and only touched upon the other parts like TV and movies. In terms of films, he did contribute to some and did animation for Gremlins 2 and Mrs. Doubtfire, but there have only been 3 movies where Chuck took credit on fully creating. There's the Bugs Bunny Roadrunner movie, which is made more to be a series of clips of his best cartoons. There's Gay Purr-ee, which ended up doing more harm than good since that's what got him kicked out of Warner Brothers in the 60s, and The Phantom Tollbooth, which is the only original movie Jones took credit in directing, sharing it with Abe Levito, of course, and by original I mean a movie he did that doesn't have Bugs or Daffy in it. But now that Jones took the Tollbooth and put it in a feature film, will it bring us to a magical world that we want to explore, or was the author of the book it was based on right when he said that they didn't do a good job at it? Let's find out. The story. This is no Alice in Wonderland, but it certainly is close. The entire structure that it tries to build up shares some strong similarities to the Lewis Carroll story, where a kid gets bored with the current life he's living in, but then gets warped into this imaginative animated world where the sense and logic work far differently than what he knows. While on his journey, he would then meet up with a large cast of colorful characters. However, even with the tone of being very Wonderland-like, it still has some of its notable differences. For one, Milo is accompanied with some of the residents of the magical world, like Talk and Humbug, and there is a little bit of a story where Milo has to rescue the princesses of Rhyme and Reason in order to restore the Kingdom of Wisdom back to its former glory. In terms of the plot itself, the focus is aimed more at exploring the world around Milo, much like how Alice in Wonderland is about the world around Alice. With that said, it's not too surprising that it turned out to be very basic. Every time Milo stops at an unusual area, he would pick up something important that he would eventually use once he faces the ultimate obstacle that's just one step away from achieving his goal.
Horrible, idiot! Awful, idiot!
Use this bottle of laughter I got from Dr. Discord. He can't take away our sense of humor.
Because of the sheer simplicity and the way that it quickly becomes formulaic, it makes the movie rather predictable of the outcome when looking at it in a narrative sense. That's the one advantage that Alice had. There is no plot to follow, nor does Alice have a goal while she's in Wonderland, and the only thing to expect is the unexpected. But now that they have to give Milo this mission to save the princesses, what else do you think would happen? I will give it credit though that the elements that it does focus on, the setting, is well thought out. It truly does deliver on this imaginative world that's based around the elements of wisdom, like a city devoted to words, a mind devoted to numbers, and a mountain devoted to negative attitude, on top of taking time to show a list of creative characters. The story itself may not be strong, but everything else that surrounds the story is creatively thought out. The animation. At least in the visuals, this is a massive improvement from Gay Purr-ee and closer to the quality of the Chuck Jones Looney Tunes cartoons and How the Grinch Stole Christmas. The signature art style of Jones is very prominent in the feature, and the creativity he put in can be ranked in the levels of what he did with The Grinch. Interestingly, this takes a similar step to what Disney did with their 1951 Alice film, where in terms of the designs, Alice is the only realistic looking figure, while the rest have a more cartoonish look. The same can be applied here, where Milo is drawn more realistically, while the rest have either a more abstract design, or they literally came out of a Chuck Jones cartoon. Not to mention the beautiful backgrounds that come with it, all with a large selection of vibrant colors and creative use of theming in the areas, like how it uses all the letters and numbers to craft both the environment and the architecture. But the one element that does stand out visually is the wide variety of using experimental animation. You could tell how the animators had to think outside the box to present different ways to show the characters. Like the doldrums would melt and split themselves, how Chroma the Great would change the color palette of everything around him by conducting his way to go from day to night, and the Awful Din's body is just thinly brushed paint with marker drawn for the outline.
That was good, Master.
Also, you may have heard how this movie contains some live action bits. I'll just clarify now that it's mostly animated and the live parts are just in the beginning and the end, with one moment where the film plays with an animated character in a real environment. While it does achieve a lot of the great things with the animation, not everything would pass well as feature quality. For one, it's extremely rare that it would use any lighting on anything that needs to be animated, making the film look really flat with no real sense of depth into it. Also, while most of the character animation can be rather smooth, there are some times when it can look limited as if it didn't have enough budget to iron out the wrinkles. The animation can have some quirks to fix out, but it is still a highly impressive film to watch. The characters. Sadly, the case of the characters is more about quantity over quality. It's not that they're bad, I mean, no one would leave thinking of a character that they hate here, but there's a high chance that they won't be remembered as actual characters. Each one tries to stand out by having this unique, quirky trait and run with it as much as they can. Starting with Milo, there's nothing that's interesting about him. He's made to be the avatar character that the audience could imagine themselves in his place so that they can explore this crazy world. Talk is the more grounded character that aids Milo to retain his senses while going out to rescue the princesses, and Humbug tries to be a sly smart aleck, but he ends off being the dumb one despite his bureaucratic approach. Everyone else that Milo meets are just the goofy residents of this world that only gets 5 minutes of fame, like the hot-tempered Officer Short Shrift, the bubbly weatherman, the kooky Dr. Cacophonus, a Discord that loves noises, and more.
Now, here, take this, and you'll never have to hear a pleasant sound again.
No.
Well, now, that's very unusual.
Some could have a bit of a connection to the plot and problems to resolve, like King Azaz and the Mathemagician, but Milo would fix the issues quickly to jump to the next area he goes to. They could have been highly memorable characters instead of having their personalities be passed off as novelties. But again, the problem is the inclusion of the plot. Now that they are given a purpose to the film, they share the same importance as a video game character, where all you care about is to talk to this guy to get the thing that'll help you fight off the bad guys. Maybe some of their quirkiness would have you remember them after watching the film and can have a little charm, but for the most part, the characters are easy to forget. The songs. Not many people actually know that this is also a musical. Well, there is a bit of a reason. The songs are so focused on trying to explain more of the plot or what's going on around Milo that they just blend in with the story and don't stand out on their own. In a way, they try so hard to emulate the whimsy of the Sherman Brothers, where they think they can write a song about small things like words and numbers and make it fun, but they don't know how to get the formula right in order to make the song itself more memorable. The closest thing that it has gotten to achieve that is with Noise, Noise, Beautiful Noise.
Noise, noise, beautiful noise, wonderful, deafening, ear-splitting noise.
Everything else, however, tries to hammer in a little moral about some of the themes of the movie. Like why words and numbers matter, like word market and numbers are the only thing that count, and the importance of having rhyme and reason in Rhyme and Reason Reign.
If you know a good joke, how do you tell a friend? Words, words, that's how. If you had a big plan, how would you know how big? Numbers.
That rhyme and reason reign once more.
There are also others that I see what they're trying to do, but they're not well executed. Like how Don't Say There's Nothing to Do in the Doldrums tries to really slow the pace to get that lazy tone in there. Or how randomly placed they would put Time is a Gift in a few spots that feel pointless.
I'm ready to jingle away the days time is a gift, give it to you. Gift to give you the time you need to have the time of your life.
Like the characters, I don't want to say that they're bad songs. None of them would be cringeworthy when they appear, or put me in a foul mood by the poor execution. The songs are just not something you'll remember from this. It really is a weird movie at first, but once it simmered in my head for a bit, I think I kinda liked it. The Phantom Tollbooth is a charmingly creative film from Chuck Jones that could have some problems like forgettable songs, dull main characters, and a weak story, but it still offers some nicely imaginative animation and some charming characters from the Kingdom of Wisdom that end up making this movie rather enjoyable. Since I've made many comparisons to Alice in Wonderland, I would recommend the movie to those who are fans of the Lewis Carroll story. They would come into a new world while also having a sense of familiarity. Is it the best thing that Chuck Jones ever crafted? No, but I would say that in terms of his works, this is rather underappreciated for all the unique achievements it offered. Hey guys, this is AniMat's, and it actually really surprises me that not many people would talk about the Phantom Tollbooth nowadays. Well, not in general, but I mean more in the animation circles. Considering that there have been many studies on Chuck Jones, especially on his Warner Brothers cartoons with What's Opera Doc, Feed the Kitty, One Froggy Evening, and all that kind of stuff, it actually does stun me that a lot of people would just glance over the Phantom Tollbooth, because, let's face it, with movies that Chuck Jones actually made with this one and Gay Purr-ee and a few others maybe, they're not really that well remembered. Chuck Jones has made more to go and create cartoons, not necessarily for movies. But with the Phantom Tollbooth, at least some of the aspects, they should not be glanced over. The examples that I brought up in the reviews, like the melting doldrums, but especially the biggest one for me would be the awful din, like that kind of animation. It really does explore his experimental side, trying to do different things in order to create some animation. Now, we all know, or at least people who did look upon Chuck Jones, we know that he has looked upon experimental animation before. One of his most famous cartoons outside of the Looney Tunes is actually The Dot and the Line, and that's legit a story about a dot and a line. So that really is experimental right there, but there are some really creative moments in there that, like I said, shouldn't be glanced over. And another aspect that did actually amaze me is that this is some of the most creative backgrounds that you'll find by Maurice Noble. He has often been highly praised for many of his background works, especially with the ones that are more associated with space, or even later in the 50s and the 60s, like Duck Dodgers and the 24th and a Half Century, once again, What's Opera Doc, or any of the cartoons that would feature Marv the Martian. He has often been regarded as one of the most praised animators who worked as a background artist. But yeah, so overall, I would say not only would this be a recommendation to Alice in Wonderland fans in terms of the story, but also this is more of a recommendation for Chuck Jones fans, at least for what he has done in the animation here. It really is worth it, and overall, the movie is a massive step up from Gay Purr-ee. But anyways, that is pretty much it with the Phantom Tollbooth, and now it is time that we go and move on to the animation hat. And by the way, if you guys would like to suggest to me an animated film you would like me to review and I would put into the animation hat, then all you have to do is write me an email at animatsreviews@gmail.com. Okay, so with that said and done, okay, well, I got it right here. So The next review shall be... Oh! My. Well, that is actually pretty interesting. You know what's funny is that The Phantom Tollbooth is actually based on a book, and so we're going to be doing the same thing. It's going to be based on another children's book. It is going to be heavily fantasy-oriented, but instead with this one, all I'm going to say is that we are not looking into the Steven Spielberg version.
Here comes. Oh, who is Papa?
I hope you're not going to be rude.
It's the overbearing know-it-all.
You should have stayed home and minded your own business. You never listened to your betters. I tried to tell you, but oh no.